now. Good morning and welcome to our webinar hosted by Norcal PTAC in partnership with the County of Santa Clara. It is called Request for Proposal. My name is James Forrest. I'm the program coordinator for Norcal PTAC. I'll talk about our program in a second. The main presentation today is going to be given by Christina Jones, our senior lead procurement specialist at Norcal PTAC. But we're going to start off with a number of presentations by our panelists from the County of Santa Clara, who we are lucky enough to have join us in co-organizing this event. So we'll start off with Michael Fogelstrom, Contracting Management, and Jalea Macadiag, Behavioral Health Services, Alice Bailey, Technology Services and Solutions, and George Montez, Social Service Agencies. So we'll be handing things over to them briefly. If you've joined our webinars before, you know I'd just like to talk a little bit about our program and who's hosting this event. So we are Norcal PTAC, that is the Northern California Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And it hurts just to say that, so Norcal PTAC rolls off the tongue much easier. We're a nonprofit program. We are based up in Arcata, where you see that red star is on the map in our service area. We are hosted by the Humboldt State University Sponsored Programs Foundation. So our office is actually on a college campus. And we are funded primarily by the DLA, that's the Defense Logistics Agency, although we also get other state and local grant sources to help do what we do to make it possible. And what do we do? Well, in 2020 alone, we helped our clients win more than $314 million. That was just about twice what we did in 2019. And we're on record to break that this year as well. So how do we do these sort of things? Well, we have a team of procurement specialists. They are the bulk of our services that we offer come from their expertise, and we can provide a couple of things. And note, there's two different kinds of services we provide. There's resources and trainings, which are public for everybody. And then we have these other two first services, which are just for clients. And so our clients, you have to have a business that's already established. And then you have to have that business have a registered primary address in this service area. So if you see in that green map there, if your business is in that service area, you can apply for our services. If it's outside, you can take a look at that link at the bottom there, find your local PTAC, APTAC-US, and you'll find your local PTAC just by going through their search feature. But if you're in our service area, then you're qualified for our services, and we can connect you with procurement specialists after you submit an application, and they can meet with you one-on-one to go over just about any procurement, government contracting topic you could think of. So if you need your certifications, if you want to do marketplace research, if you want to be sign up for GSA schedules, how to do business with federal government, California state government, local, city, county, doesn't matter. We can help with just about every level. For our clients who are receiving these services already, we can also set up a custom bid matching profile for you. This is pretty neat. Basically, you work out with your procurement specialist, you get some criteria put in based on the goods and services that you sell. And then every morning you wake up to an email in your inbox with the opportunities that it is aggregated for you. And that way you can bid on those RFPs right away. Third thing we offer, as you all know, because you're here today, is resources and trainings. These are free. These are free to join for anyone from anywhere. You don't have to be a client. And so we're all very, very happy to have folks from all around join on our webinars. And I'll talk a little bit about some upcoming webinars later today. A little bit of housekeeping here. Once again, I am recording this session, and the recording of the slides will be sent to everyone later today. For a question and answer session, we will be having a Q&A later. Please enter questions as soon as they pop into your head into the Q&A tab. So in this version of Zoom, we have a chat and we have a Q&A. There's two different ways to communicate. For the Q&A, I'll read that aloud to the presenters later during the Q&A portion. The chat we can use for networking, as we've already done, or if you have some technical issue or something like that. I may also be dropping some links in there. All right, I think that pretty much covers it. I hope you guys stay engaged and ask lots of good questions and enjoy our presentation today in partnership with the County of Santa Clara. This is part of a series of presentations of webinars that we're having in partnership with them, and we're very thankful for our partnership. So I believe getting started today is Michael Fogelstrom. So if you could go ahead and unmute yourself and start your video and take it away.
Good morning. First and foremost, huge shout out to James and Christina. Thank you for everything that you do. We are excited to put this on. This is the second of our quarterly events. So we want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. In a brief moment, I will introduce our other panelists from the county. But before we do that, I'd just like to give you guys a quick overview of the County of Santa Clara and everything that we do here and how we're structured. So James, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the County of Santa Clara is the 6th most populous county in the state. We have about 1.9 million people living within the county itself, 168 voting districts and 15 different cities around 1,300 square miles. So it's pretty dense with a pretty big, diverse population, large concentration of electronics, IT, research and manufacturing firms. It's kind of the heart of Silicon Valley, of course, and the 5th largest county government in the state. We have a budget of close to $8 billion. About 3.7 billion is spent on third county services and supplies. Just so you know, the organization itself has approximately 50 agencies and departments. So a little more than the 35 plus we have on the slide. I think that's in relation to our newest budget. And we have a hybrid approach to procurement here in the county. So while we provide services such as public safety and justice, road construction, maintenance, parks and rec, and environmental resource management, all of our goods and services procurement goes through our centralized procurement department. And they help us to acquire those goods and related services or non-professional services for countywide use. Whereas professional services such as consulting services, health and safety, IT consulting, those are all managed by the individual departments. And so you'll get a great opportunity to hear a little bit more about what they do and what they purchase in about 2 seconds. Yeah, actually, in fact, with that, why don't we go over to our panelists, James? So if you can go to the next slide, please. I would like to introduce each one of our panelists and have them give us a brief overview of the department and perhaps any upcoming projects or solicitations they may have. So why don't we start off with Angelia Makatiag of the Behavioral Health Services Department.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you for having behavioral health here. As mentioned, I'm the Behavioral Health Services Manager. I'm the contracts manager. And in our department, what we purchase are professional human services, and our services that we purchase focus on mental health and substance use treatment related services. Our target populations include those with mental illnesses and substance use issues, and we also contract with providers that provide outreach and prevention services. So our typical population includes the children, youth, and family population, older adults, criminal justice system individuals, and the chronically homeless populations. And specifically related to our active RFPs, our department does business and communicates with organizations via the Periscope Holdings website during our questions and answers period. And also we have what is called the pre-bid conference for every one of our RFPs. We have a pre-proposal conference, which allows potential proposers to ask questions about the RFP, the process, and it gives a good opportunity to answer any questions that potential proposers have before they intend to submit an application to the bid. And just for information for behavioral health, the best place to learn more about RFPs in general that we plan to release is through a report through the Board of Supervisors Master Acquisitions List, also known as the MAL. And this list is published once a month on the Board of Supervisors meeting through a report that we call Report Relating to Anticipated Requests for Proposals, or RFPs. So essentially the report lists all of the RFPs in the different departments throughout the county. And it gives a notice to the public of all of the RFPs that will be released in the future. And just FYI for this group who's on the line, the next BOS meeting is on Tuesday, 8/31, so next Tuesday. And this anticipated RFP report has actually been published on the agenda if you go to the board website for the 8/31 meeting. So if you look on that agenda, you could see on the MAL list that behavioral health has a few RFPs coming up in the months of September and October. Some of them include our violence prevention program and intimate partner violence prevention RFP. We have also a transportation services for Santa Clara County behavioral health clients RFP coming out. We have for the substance use treatment services, a sobering station services RFP, and we also have a locum psychiatry services RFP that will be released in October. So that's just a mini preview of what's coming up for the behavioral health services department in September and October. But as I mentioned, at each board meeting once a month, we publish a list. So as you go through the list, you'll see the different RFPs that will be released through our department and the other departments as well. So that's just a little preview of the Behavioral Health Services Department and the services that we purchase. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelia, and great mention of that upcoming RFPs report. That is a really great resource for everybody to keep their eye on. I want to turn it over to Alice Bailey from the Technology Services and Solutions Department.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Michael Fogelstrom. Thank you, James. Angelia, great job on mentioning the MAL. We also list all of our RFPs that are upcoming on the MAL. I'm the Senior IT Vendor Manager for the County of Santa Clara for Technology Solutions, Services and Solutions Department. We manage all of the IT consultants throughout the county. Our department also supports all of the IT applications and solutions throughout all of the various departments throughout the county. So most of all of our bids go through central procurement, like Michael talked about. So everything would be listed on our Periscope BidSync solution for you to be able to find. Currently, we don't have any RFPs that are getting let within the next couple of months, but as projects are rolling up, since we've just started into our new fiscal year, there will be several upcoming in the future months. Please check on the MAL report to see what is upcoming. And if I'll pop in my email address into the chat window, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me as those surface on the MAL report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. And our final panelist for today, George Montez from the Social Services Agency.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. Great presentations, team. So the Social Services Agency is comprised of 4 subdivisions. It is the Department of Family and Children Services. It is the Department of Eligibility and Benefits Services, the Department of Aging and Adult Services, the agency offices, and we also provide some other CEO human service type organizations like the Office of Immigrant Relations, the Office of Gender-Based Violence Prevention. And our portfolio of services or contracts range anywhere from 500 to 600 contracts any given year. Solicitations range anywhere from 20 to 30 solicitations of different sorts. The populations that we serve is broad as well. We serve infants to older adults, prevention to crisis interventions. Social services as a whole has a large scale of service categories such as child welfare, CalFresh, CalWorks, prevention education, senior nutrition programs, adult protective services, foster care, immigration, and many, many others that we just are responsible to provide in the community. Like both behavioral health and the technology department, we also use the MAL as a form to provide information to the community. And we also use the Periscope system to open up solicitations. And so upcoming solicitations right now, still early in the year, we're gonna pick this list up, but we do have a CalWorks solicitation up and coming, a learning and disabilities evaluation type of solicitation, and a transit assistant program solicitation. That in the next quarter is gonna probably move up to maybe 15 to 20 other solicitations that we will facilitate. And I'm always available for questions as well. And if you all want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to respond.
Thank you, George. So yes, this is a great sample of everything that is offered across the county. As mentioned, there are about 50 different departments and offices across the county that provide services in similar or very different from what you just heard about. So please do keep your eye on that upcoming RFP list, or if you have questions, please do reach out to these panelists. I do believe there's a Q&A period later on in this presentation, so hopefully we can ask our panelists some additional questions then. James, if it's okay, I'd like to just go on to the next slide. And I just want to turn it over to Christina Jones to take the presentation further. Thank you, Christina.
Okay, good morning, and thank you for that introduction. I am going to share my screen. Let me put this in for you. Okay, great. Thank you again for the Santa Clara County team for sharing the different opportunities and how to do business best with your agency. So again, my name is Christina Jones. I'm the Senior Lead Procurement Specialist with the Norcal PTAC. This is just a little bit about my background as far as things that I've worked on over the past 13 years, as well as I've participated and been a vendor myself on a lot of contracts with the federal and state government. So let's get started. This is just a disclosure to let you know that this information is current to the best of my knowledge as of this presentation today. So in the previous webinar that we did at the last quarter, we discussed requests for quotations, invitations for bids, and informal competitive procurement. So just to kind of revisit those just for a moment, requests for quotations, of course, are quotes only, and those are used for smaller solicitations, and IFBs are more specific. They follow a very formal process. And then informal, competitive procurements, procurements of a total contract value of $100,000. So today we're going to focus in on requests for proposals. But if you'd like to revisit those, review the last presentation, which can be viewed on Santa Clara County's website, or also the Norcal PTAC site. So during today's presentation, we'll discuss the full process for RFPs, and we'll also review during this process an actual RFP. So we'll be going through that, walking through screenshots of what an RFP would look like and what are some of the important things that you should pay attention to. We'll talk about a few technical tips and resources to increase your competitiveness. So first off, what is an RFP? Request for proposal? Obviously, it's a formal competitive process, and it's based on best value. So what they're looking for is, we have a problem and we're looking for the vendor that can best provide the solution within certain parameters. For example, within the scope that we've designed, where we've determined there's something that we need assistance with, someone that is also very experienced typically, and but we're looking for, or the county is looking for, I should say, you to provide that solution. So let's talk about first whether or not, when we see an opportunity out there on Periscope or Ariba, whether or not we should bid. So we want to first determine our interest and capacity. Of course, we're interested in the opportunity, but we want to determine if it's a good use of our time based on our skill set and our capacity. So we're going to go through three parts of the proposal I recommend that you look at first. So first off, when you first log into, or you look at the opportunity on BidSync or Ariba, you will see an introduction. And you may see, just from that introductory paragraph, which we'll review in a moment, you may find that I don't want to proceed further just by looking at what they're asking for here. But assuming that you've looked at that and you want to look at it a little closer, the first thing I would suggest you look at is the schedule of events. When is the RFP due? Is there a proposal conference, for instance, that you've missed? that is critical to you, understanding the requirement. So all of these things here, what's the deadline for submission? What's the deadline for submission of questions? So maybe you've looked through the RFP and found that you have several questions. What have you passed that deadline? So those are some things to just consider. First step when you're deciding whether or not you have the capacity and interest in moving forward with the RFP. Next, I would say review the scope. So look at the scope of work to see what is it that they're asking. What are the qualifications that they require you to have? Is there a minimum qualifications? What's the schedule? What is it that, within this scope that they're looking for, and to see if you are strong in being able to meet these requirements, or if you feel like it may be a struggle. This may also be a time to consider whether or not a collaboration or a partnership with another firm that would help you meet this scope may be beneficial, and you can kind of brainstorm that before you submit the request. Thirdly, I recommend you look at the evaluation criteria. What are they going to evaluate you on? So in this example that we have here, we can see the most important area starts with the ability to meet the scope, the qualifications and requirements. So the scope, which we just reviewed, which is why that's very important to see how strong are you in being able to meet that. Do you have the qualifications, the skill set, the staff, in order to score highly in that category? So those are some things to consider. Of course, corporate strength, they want to look at your financial strength a lot of times to make sure that once you're awarded the contract, you're able to meet the need. For instance, being able to wait until you're paid 45 days, but continue on to pay your staff and to complete the work. And a local preference is applied. So if you're local in Santa Clara County, there may be a 5-point preference for you, making up that 100-point total. Now, assuming that we've gotten past that point, we're looking at the full solicitation now, and these are some areas that you should focus on. A few of these are ones that we just covered, but just assuming we're flipping through the solicitation, those 3 sections are what I would recommend you review first. Now you're looking at the entire solicitation. So we're going to start going through these proposal sections and just kind of outlining a bit what you should look for. So the first is the invitation for bid as RFP, but they're inviting you to submit a response. So just kind of read this over, that the County of Santa Clara is seeking proposals from qualified organizations. So just think about those keywords as you're looking through this invitation. And in this case, they're asking for in-custody parenting education classes for inmates incarcerated in the Santa Clara County Jail. And they're asking more specific, I'm not going to read this verbatim, but they're asking specifically for what they need in a short synopsis. Also take note that this RFP may result in a single award. So they're not looking for multiple vendors. Also important for you as far as, just understanding what is your opportunity here. And I also like to point out that it states that there may be an award. So there may not be an award if they don't receive, bids from what they feel are qualified vendors, or maybe there's a change in budgeting and they're not able to, proceed with the RFP. So just think of those things. Always remember that there's a possibility it could be canceled, or just they don't feel they receive, the right responses, so they decide not to go for it. Next is the background. So in this case, it lists the background, the education and in-custody visitation programs for incarcerated parents is required to offer a variety of services in Santa Clara County. So just kind of understanding what it is that they need, what it is that they're requiring. And again, it just gives you more insight into how you need to prepare your response, what do you need to have ready. And then back to the sample scope. In this case, these are the areas that they're targeting. There's typically a lot more detail as you go through the actual scope. For instance, It may be written in paragraphs explaining exactly what they want, and then also some bulleted information on how they want it presented. So pay very close attention to the scope and what the agency is looking for. So this is, again, is just one example. And then the appendices. So sometimes in the instructions, they'll refer to certain appendix information that you need to review. Or for instance, in this case, Appendix B is a price proposal schedule. You definitely want to pay close attention to that. And anything that, as you can see, Appendix A and B are to do with the project scope requirements. And then the supplemental attachments, which are declarations, are forms that you need to submit, but may not be part of your initial overview as far as making sure you understand what it is that you need to respond to. So we have a sample explanation of events. So it may include like the point of contact, who's the point of contact for this RFP with the agency. Pre-proposal conference details usually include, a lot of times now they're virtual. So maybe there'll be a link to sign in for the event. Also, sometimes proposals have a deadline for you to register to attend the pre-proposal event. So you can't just, show up at the time. Sometimes proposals have that you need to reach out to the designated point of contact by a certain time and notify them that you intend to attend the event. And then deadlines for written questions. So we kind of went over these when we looked at that screenshot of important things to look at in the beginning. But now just think of it as you're looking at this in more detail as far as what it is that you actually need to do to get started and what's most important. So then I would recommend going through those proposal submissions, format and organization of documents. So you're going to set this up, for instance, if they're telling you it needs to be presented in a certain way, this is one of the ways that your bid may be not scored as highly or may be found as non-responsive because you did not follow the instructions as far as formatting and organization of the documents in your submission. So if they, have a list of forms, which oftentimes they do, and they want them ordered in a certain way, even for just the upload and submission, you need to make sure that they follow that structure exactly. And so that's actually pointing to the last bullet, which is non-conforming submissions. So for the evaluation criteria, again, we covered this in the beginning as far as a quick glance, but now we're going to craft our response around these evaluation criteria as far as making sure that we clearly show, and maybe you want to cut this into your Word doc as you're preparing it, depending on what the format is that the county requires. But as you're preparing it, you may want to cut in just ability to meet the scope of work. And initially just outline all the ways that you are able to meet the scope of work. Perhaps you've already, done this kind of work and you have some type of scope that you've already developed that you want to implement here. Of course, it's going to be custom to what the county wants, but it may be a starting point for you as far as putting together what and how you're going to meet the scope of work. So, and then qualifications, same thing. What's going to qualify you for this? Maybe again, past experience, maybe in some cases, special licensing. Having worked with the county prior on a contract like this is also relevant experience. So just think of all of those things and maybe take, for instance, in number 2, because those points are 55 points of what you're going to be evaluated on, and just list those out along with your initial response as far as how you are going to meet each of these sections, and then build upon that, of course, with writing it out technically, how you respond, and making sure that it again meets the requirements as far as how it should be laid out. Local preference, if you have that, of course, then you'll fill out the form. You'll show that you are within the county of Santa Clara. And so you'll get 5 points for that. but focus a lot on 2 and 1. Obviously, those are the heavier weighted evaluation criteria, but of course, focus on those as far as even just writing the technical. So is this opportunity aligned with your business? Just trying to move these things here in my way in the screen. Business offering and timeline. So that just goes back to the initial point of, are you able to meet the requirement, the deadlines? Are you able to really meet the scope? And so we just talked about that, making sure you outline how you're going to meet the project scope, that you review important appendices. For instance, the pricing template that's enclosed is very important. How should that be presented? Is there any information or guidelines they provide you around pricing? And also think of, before you submit, again, do you need any strategic partners in order to make sure you, again, back to the scope, you're able to meet that scope. And those things will help you be strong in the evaluation criteria. Okay, so let's move into the requirements. And there's always, for RFPs, a list of forms. A lot of these forms, if you've bid before with the Department of General Services, you'll find are somewhat similar. So like a declaration submittal form, those forms are very similar to what the state of California, if not the same, what the state of California uses. Be cognizant of insurance requirements, whether or not you need to provide something up front. Typically, if you win the award, then you'll provide proof of insurance, but there may be, for instance, in this case, a form that you need to complete that states that you will comply with the insurance requirements. And as far as like the terms and conditions, beyond just reviewing and signing the form, beyond signing the form, I should say, really review those requirements. What are the terms and the conditions of the contract? Kind of like the regulations, which I always point to as very important and sometimes forgotten, because the regulations are what is going to, basically you're going to be tied to once you sign on with this contract, if you are awarded the contract. References. So having your list of references, I think in this case, just having looked at this actual solicitation, there were 3 references that are required. Make sure that you're able to meet those requirements, as far as those references will get back to the county when they request, when they follow up or to confirm your reference, and or if they're required to submit the reference, that they themselves, your customer submits the reference in time. So those are just some things generally with proposal writing that you want to be sure that you have those things in place, so that you don't lose out on the bid, for instance, because your references won't respond or they're not submitted the information in time. So all of these forms, as I mentioned, aren't applicable to every solicitation, but this is just kind of like a list, a general list of forms that you'll see throughout County of Santa Clara, and you'll also see these with the state of California, many of them. So a letter of transmittal is always required. And so each proposal, as I mentioned, should include a letter of transmittal and identifying the organization and some basic information about the organization, who's the point of contact, who's authorized to contractually obligate the organization. That's always important. And then, of course, pay attention, because a lot of times companies are so busy responding to what they pulled down from BidSync, or Periscope or Reba, to the initial proposal that they pulled down, and have not paid attention to the addendum that was added. So maybe there are, a change in date, or based on the Q&A, there was a change in what's actually required to be submitted. So make sure you acknowledge receipt of those on the letter of transmittal, but also you pay attention and see if they impact exactly what you need to submit. Or even impact whether or not you qualify, for example. Identify all sections of the proposal that the proposer claims contain proprietary or confidential information. So make sure you do that as well, because in general, in the state of California, under the California Public Records Act, it's public information for other vendors to request copies of your winning bid or any bid that was submitted in response to a solicitation. So within that letter of transmittal, you'll want to put your best foot forward with an executive summary, which really highlights your skills, capacity, past performance in a summation of just, why you're a great fit for this organization. So again, I would also lean on when you were looking at what's in the evaluation section, what are some important things to point out in this executive summary that you want to make sure are highlighted from the beginning in this letter of transmittal, showing that you are highly qualified and capable, have the capacity for this solicitation. So in the corporate information, you're going to list, for instance, the length of time that you can provide the proposed goods or services. The county has some pre-designated length of time, which I can't recall at the moment, that you do need to say, but typically agencies will have that this, for instance, pricing, products or services are good, for instance, for 90 days. You must, state that the time that from when you provided it, how long your quote remains good. A description of your organization, your principals, also your teammates. For instance, if you've collaborated or have a joint venture with another organization that's going to help you meet the scope of work, you want to make sure you highlight both organizations' contributions to making this a complete package. For example, you may start out with company A, high-level overview of the principals, skill sets, what it is, area of specialization and expertise, as it mentions here. Then you have company B, same thing. And maybe C is a combination, the team. And so how the team together is going to meet the scope of work. So think of that, bringing together those two entities, of course, highlighting what it is each offers, but also showing how the team is going to meet the need. So complete any disclosure of subsidiaries, parents, other corporate affiliates. So not speaking necessarily of a subcontractor, but speaking of if you have a parent company or, an affiliation to a large company. So those are types of things that you want to make sure you disclose. Any lawsuits, hopefully you don't have that. And statement of relevant experience in providing and or supporting the proposed solution, which hopefully by describing the organization or organizations that are participating in this bid, it'll be clear what your statement of relevant experience is. Financial information is always really important. The county wants to make sure, or any federal state agency, that you are able to actually, perform on the contract. So you're awarded a contract based on, what information you've provided, past experience, capability and so forth. However, once you get the contract, they want to make sure that you are able to actually perform, because you have the resources in order to perform on the contract until you're paid, or also just making sure you can meet the needs of the employees that you've hired or subcontractors that you've hired to perform on this contract. So you may see varying versions of what's needed, but in this case with the county, you're going to need to submit the most recent year's independently audited financial statements, as well as those for the preceding 3 years. So pay attention also to this as far as, determining whether or not you want to bid. If they're asking for detailed information on financial statements that you are unable to meet as far as previous years and or recent years, you may want to bid anyway, because you have a great solution and you have the ability to meet this need. But however, maybe in the preceding 3 years, your financials weren't quite as strong. Not necessarily will, eliminate you, but, again, it's about putting our best foot forward, appearing as strong as possible. So maybe you have some, a deficit in that area, but maybe your current financial stability over the past year and or your ability to meet the need will still put you in a position to be considered. But just look at the rules, what they're requiring you to submit, and take that into account before you bid. And if independently audited financial statements, because sometimes companies don't have that, a lot of small businesses I know don't necessarily have that, you should state the reason and instead submit sufficient information. So for instance, you can order a Dun & Bradstreet report, or showing your company's business rating. You can order that, or some other supporting document that shows that you're in a financial position to bid on this. And we're just talking about references. References are always important, and it's always sort of an issue when you're a new business. For instance, maybe you have you have the ability or capability personally to meet the need, but you don't have the references because maybe you came from a company where you worked for 20 years doing this exact thing, but you haven't done it for yourself. Done it under your company. You've only done it as an employee of someone else's company. So sometimes those can be difficult situations to kind of like, I need past performance, but in order to get past performance, I need a contract. So consider, partnering with someone who has that past performance as under your company though. So that way you're building past performance for yourself that you can use in the future as well. And also hopefully get to participate on the contract. But what we're talking about here is making sure in this case, this is an example, that you submit at least 3 different external references from clients. So kind of like also back to what I'm saying, external references. So it wouldn't be necessarily if you completed this kind of work or did this kind of work for another company as an employee, I mean. So references are preferred to be of previous or existing public sector clients. So not to say that if you did something for a large commercial client that it would be excluded, but they prefer public sector clients because it's most similar to the county's work. And then they give you a list of what the minimum information that you should be able to provide for each reference that you submit. The insurance requirements, again, it's important to be aware of what these are, because once the contract's in effect, you will need to provide insurance. In some cases, you'll need to add the county onto your liability insurance or something of that nature. So you want to be familiar with what the requirements are, and also with your insurance carrier, what the cost is if there is to add the county to your contract. That hopefully you'll win. And moving on with insurance requirements. So again, provide your insurance broker agent with a copy of the requirements and request a certificate of insurance. So that's what I'm referring to as far as adding the county onto your insurance for the contract award that you received. So there are some samples here, and these links, whenever you see a link, once you receive the slides, which you will receive after the presentation, I think within the next day, you'll be able to click on the link to look at specific examples. I talked about this a little bit, but terms and conditions are really important. Make sure you read through, and if you object to any of the county's terms and conditions, that you may indicate that you object, but I highly recommend that you reconsider if you're going to object, because there may be other vendors, many others that don't object to the county's terms and conditions, and they are aligned to for the best interest of the county as well as you. So, but if there is something that you object to and you have a reason, you do have an option to do that. That's also a big difference between doing business with a public agency versus doing business with, a private commercial firm, because they set the terms and that's what it is. But here the county is giving you an opportunity to object. So the county, as it says here, may or may not accept your alternative language. But the fact is, it is open for you to present why you object to any particular terms and have the county review that and make an assessment of whether or not they can incorporate it. So the proposal and the pricing schedule, in this case, there was an Appendix A, which showed the scope of work, and it actually had like a spreadsheet for the pricing. Or actually, I'm sorry, that's Appendix B is a spreadsheet of the pricing. And just make sure you review that as well as far as what pricing breakdown is required. If it's required to be segmented down between, not just your final labor costs, if it's like a services contract and they're just asking what's your price per hour, or is it something where they're asking for more detail, a breakdown of your, general administrative overhead and things like that, if they're asking for basically a buildup of your pricing. So make sure you review that carefully and respond according to what the spreadsheet asks for you to include. And then that will be uploaded as a second line item in Periscope. So in this example, it's an upload to Periscope. The declaration submittal form, this is a form also used by, like I said, if you've bid before with the Department of General Services, you've seen this form. It contains a non-collusion declaration, your declaration of a local business if you are such, and compliance with any equal opportunities, non-discrimination clauses that are there. So remember, for an RFP, the basis of award is always going to be best value. So they're looking for the vendor that can provide a solution to their problem or to their need, and show exactly how they're going to do it versus, for instance, if a request for quote where they've already kind of vetted out and know what it is they need exactly, and we want a price for that. But in this case, you are being evaluated based on what you're presenting as your recommendation of how to best provide a solution. So also your expertise, again, all the things we discussed, your past performance doing this kind of work before. In this particular example, your experience doing business with Public Works, another public agency, is also helpful. And of course, it's always helpful if you've done this type of work before with the county, with Santa Clara County. So let's talk a little bit about some technical tips. These are just pretty much go across most solicitations. Mind the schedule, meaning make sure that you are paying attention to when the due date is, when are the questions due, if there have been any amendments that you need to review and of course acknowledge, and just monitoring to make sure that, again, you're on top of it, not only from when you first pulled it down, but up till current, where there may need changes needed based on what came out in the Q&A to your response. So making sure you're paying attention to all of those things. And also important, unless instructed, do not submit your own proposal format. Make sure you follow what is listed in the proposal. So when we looked at that initial instructions area, we looked at a snippet of like a schedule, but right beneath that will be proposal format, for instance. So you'll want to look at what's the proposal format. Maybe it's a certain number of pages. Maybe it's even, certain margins it needs to be in, are just a certain order. So as we discussed before, like with this solicitation, there is an order that the forms need to be submitted. So even small things like that are highly important to pay attention to when you're submitting a response. And making sure everything is signed. So all the pages that require signatures are signed. So some of this is just goes back to minding your schedule so that you have time to re-review the forms and review all of the requirements to make sure that you've not missed anything. Because sometimes when we're, in a rush and it's due in a few minutes, and if you looked at like any of the bid portals where they have like so many minutes left, or a day left, and then it's down to minutes left to before the bid is past due, sometimes we can get into a frantic mode and overlook things. So this is kind of making sure that you stay on schedule and allow time for you to review everything, provide all signatures. You've added all of anything that needs to be signed as an addendum and acknowledged it, as well as included it if there are changes needed to your proposal response. So again, the county will not accept late filings. It tells you what time it's due. And once that time is passed, it's passed. Even if you submitted a minute late, it's late, and it's will generally not be accepted. They reserve the right, as always, to decide to accept it, but it's a standard rule that it won't be accepted. And so you can always withdraw, amend anytime prior to closing date and time. So you can, if you realize, oh, I missed this form, or I didn't sign the form, you can always, pull down your solicitation, withdraw it, and re-upload it prior to the closing date and time of the RFP is due. And there's just a note here about reaching Periscope if you're having technical difficulties with uploading the documentation or anything to do with the technical side. You can reach Periscope directly. And that's their information here for technical support. The web resources, a lot of what we covered, but also specific links for where the county has their bid opportunities and information and definitions on different terms we covered today, as well as the previous session, can be found by initially visiting their website. And let's talk a moment about increasing your competitiveness. So first of all, you want to register with Periscope so that you'll be notified when bid opportunities come out. And also, so you're prepared, of course, to bid on anything if you have to submit it back through the Periscope system. So it has again, the links are all active. So once you receive the slides, you'll be able to click on these if you're not registered and get registered. So learn more about the forecast opportunities. So it's best to anticipate something in advance versus when it comes out, trying to scramble to see whether or not it's a bid or no bid situation. So learning more about what's upcoming, you can see the current solicitations, of course, but also just knowing what's coming up. Is there something coming up in the future that you could be marketing for, getting prepared for, partially putting together, your response, or putting together your team. If you need a team to respond, learning, researching and learning more about what's coming up is always helpful. And like I mentioned in a previous slide, requesting a public records. So if you look out there, you've done your research, and we can help you with this definitely at the PTAC. If you have done your research and you find that there are a couple of companies that have won awards that are very similar to the scope that you would be interested in or you're capable of, you can submit your request for a copy of the winning bid to kind of get a little bit more insight on what made this a winning bid. Could be pricing, but it could also be, from a technical standpoint, what was submitted that this particular vendor had that you may or may not have, or maybe you feel after reviewing this, you find that you have a better solution. So it's just about being prepared prior to an opportunity being released. Okay. Oops, let me go back a sec. Sorry, my things are moving around here. Okay. So make sure that you respond, attend any events, pre-proposal or site visits. Even if it's not mandatory, it always gives you a better idea of the opportunity. So make sure that you definitely attend where you know, to make sure you're most prepared for the opportunity. Participate in the Q&A, ask any questions that you find after reviewing the solicitation. Also, definitely review the Q&A, whether or not you submitted a question, because someone else may have thought of a question that you know, will benefit you as far as helping you with putting together your response, or also the answer to that question could have changed how you should respond or what you should respond with. So definitely review the Q&A, whether or not you submit a question or not. Accept the county's standard terms and conditions, and reach out to us because we can help you at the PTAC with putting together a response, determining if it's a bid or no bid, if you think it's, you know, you're highly qualified, or if you think maybe you should wait and just conduct, as we talked about on a previous slide, more research. Also just looking into other bid responses that were submitted and getting a better idea on what the county is looking for. And this is just talking about the local business preference, that you can get a 5% bid preference if basically 5 points added to your solicitation if you are a local business. So, and it applies to some formal solicitations, but there are some exclusions. So local preference exclusions are public works, like construction contracts, or of course where it's precluded, are prevented basically by law or regulation. And any contracts that are funded in whole or part by donation or gifts. And that's it for my portion of the presentation until we move to the Q&A, and I'm going to turn this back over to James.
Thank you, Christina. That was really, really informative and helpful. Like she said, we are going to have a Q&A, and just a housekeeping reminder, there is a Q&A in a chat, and we're posting contact information for some of the panelists in the chat and other things like that. If you have a question you'd like me to read aloud and pose to the panelists and to a presenter, Christina here, please put that in the Q&A, and we'll do our best to get to it before the end of the time. So we've got a couple events coming up. We're always working on events. You can check them out, our calendar, the link at the bottom there. But we've got a three-part sort of series clustered around PTAC Day. And so, like I said, there's more than one PTAC. There is in fact about 95 of them. And this is a day to celebrate all of our clients' successes. So that is on September 15th. So to start it off on Tuesday, the day before, we're having a meeting on discovering opportunities in the federal marketplace. Then we will have an introduction to government contracting on the 15th at 10 a.m. as well. That'll be given by our director, so that's a treat. And then we're partnering with the SBA for a webinar called Behind the Curtain on Federal Small Business Set-Asides. So if that's a topic you're interested in, tune in September 16th at 10 in the morning. And we've got more, another webinar in this series that today's a part of with the County of Santa Clara coming up in November 2021. It's not posted yet, but please check in on our calendar a bit later to find out what's next in the series. So as mentioned, we have time for questions. We've been going through, and our panelists have been typing in answers to questions. So perhaps I will take a look through there because I don't see any open questions right now. And just a reminder, please enter your questions into the Q&A rather than the chat. It's just a little bit easier to manage it that way. We can all follow along together. But I do see one in the chat that I'll ask aloud this time. Anna Rickelman is asking, if your firm does not have a local office in Santa Clara County, does it minimize a consultant's chances to win contracts? And anybody in the panel, I believe, can answer this. In fact, panelists, would you mind turning on your videos so we can see your faces?
Hi, this is George. I can answer that question. There is a local preference that adds 5 additional points, at least in the human services solicitations, but it does not limit your ability to submit a solicitation if you are a competitive entity.
Okay, good to know. Christina, if you could advance to the next slide just so I could say Q&A.
Okay.
And not super crucial, but all right. Any other questions in the Q&A? Let's see. So I'll just read out some of the questions that have already been answered in the chat here. In the Q&A, you can also read along. Anonymous attendee asked, I'm taking over a position. How can I find out if my company is already qualified to submit a bid to Santa Clara County? So Angelia answered, you would read through the RFP and requirements on Periscope holding, and there's a link there you can click on to determine if you're qualified and have capacity to submit a bid for an RFP. Read through the scope of work, evaluation criteria to determine if your organization is qualified. So that's a good resource there. Let's see. What is your website for RFP? Hermant Desai is asking. Angelia answered, BHSD does not have a specific website for the RFPs, but RFPs are released onto the Periscope website. There's a link there. All right, and we have someone raising their hand. I believe, was this the person who wanted to ask a question out loud? Sort of made an executive decision that that would be all right. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute them. And you can ask Subramanian. Feel free to ask your question out loud now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful event. I have to thank you all, and also especially the person who arranged the whole thing. And I don't want to take too much of my time and of everyone's time. All I want to know is if we have a technology product, and if we want to make sure that the equivalent product used in the Santa Clara County system may be inferior to our quality, all we need is the proper evaluation committee to consider to give an opportunity for us to give, get into a demo. How are we going to do this? Is there a way, easy way to accomplish this? I'm a technical guy. I mean, I have more than 35 years of experience in the wound care area, tissue regenerative area. So I may be able to impart 2 cents worth of my information, and especially some of the products that are being used. You won't believe recently they have been researched to find that they are carcinogenic, or they contain carcinogenic material in them. But unfortunately, the FDA already approved, and they are reconsidering their approval process. But we as a scientist, we will be able to give the information, technical information, but I don't know to whom we have to go and refer to. The value analysis team of the system is that having the qualified people who are scientists, or the people who are at the level of understanding the science behind the whole thing. How are we going to raise our voice and get our information? Because this is going to save the lives. And I mean, this is for improving the healthcare system as a whole. And at the same time, it's also going to save money for the hospital system. Because if the patient is not healed within a prescribed time, then it is going to be added expense for the government, for the hospital, and also it's a nuisance for the patient care too. So how are we going to raise our voice, or how are we going to bring our attention to the table? And unfortunately, the procurement department or the purchase department is not even hearing us. And as a matter of fact, we gave this information to Catherine, and Catherine is still working hard to find out the proper people to reply to us. And they don't even respond for this is happening.
Subramanian, if we could keep the question a little brief, just in respect of everyone's time. We have 20.
Okay, so all I'm asking, how shall we address the problem of taking a new product to the committee of value analysis committee for further evaluation?
Thank you for your question. I believe in the intro, we referenced that the county is in a hybrid structure. And so that for professional services, the acquisition of certain goods that may be specific to the needs of the department, generally this is driven by the department itself. So your question is probably best directed to the health and hospital system. I do understand that you have been in contact with our vendor outreach program. I continue to encourage you to direct your questions there. I believe that conversation can probably be best handled through that team. Thank you for the question.
Okay, and we have a question from Christopher Borlas here. Let's see. Hello, I'm a vendor offering cultural resource management, environmental consulting, and compliance. I was briefly learning about upcoming projects and large-scale construction work outlined in the Santa Clara Water District. Is this something I will find on the Periscope forecast resource as you guys outlined? Does anyone have an idea how to answer that question?
If it's an open and competitive solicitation, it will reside on the Periscope, James. So to answer Christopher's question, yes, it will be listed as an open and competitive solicitation within the Periscope solution.
All right, cut and dry. We have any more questions before we wrap it up for the day? Okay, well, I would just like to thank everyone for joining. Thank you so much to our panelists for showing up and doing the research to prepare for this presentation. Thanks to Christina for putting all of this together. I'm going to drop a survey in the chat. If you could just click on that and just let us know what you felt about the webinar today. It really means a lot to us so we can keep bettering our services. It means a lot to our funder too. So thanks again to everyone, and thanks to the audience for joining today. And hope to see you in the next part of this series in November. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.